Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. Rain pounded against the thin roof of the cabin, hammering like the frantic heartbeat of someone who had just realized their world was collapsing. Leora's hands trembled as she clutched the tattered shawl around her shoulders, trying to hide the bruises that traced her arms. Outside, the forest seemed alive, shadows twisting and dancing under the pale moonlight, echoing her fear. The Alpha's growl tore through the night like a blade, sharp and unrelenting. She had thought marrying him would protect her, save her from the predators who had haunted her family for generations, but standing here, soaked and shivering, Leora understood that the man she had trusted might be a predator himself. Her pulse raced, each beat a painful reminder that she had traded one danger for another, and worse, the danger now slept under the same roof. The wind clawed through the cracks in the cabin walls, whispering secrets she wasn't ready to hear, secrets that promised betrayal. The door burst open, a gust of cold air slicing through the room, and he stood there. Kieran, the Alpha she had vowed to obey, loomed like a shadow, larger than any human should be. His eyes, molten gold in the dim light, seemed to pierce straight through her chest, and for the first time, Leora noticed the subtle curl of disdain in his lips, the way his hand flexed near the dagger at his belt. She realized she had never truly known him, not the man she had married for protection. Her body wanted to flee, but the memory of the pact, the unspoken promise that bound her to him in exchange for safety, kept her rooted. A storm raged inside her, louder than the one outside, as she understood she had stepped into a cage gilded with lust and power, a cage with teeth sharper than any predator she had known. Leora's breath came in short, uneven gasps as Kieran's gaze swept the cabin, lingering on every fragile item she had dragged from her old life. The fire sputtered weakly in the hearth, flickering over the pale curves of her face, and she could see the hunger in his expression, the same hunger that had seduced her with promises of protection. "You belong here," he said, voice low, silky, but with an edge that made her skin crawl. The words should have comforted her, a reassurance of belonging, but instead they struck her like icy knives. She realized with horror that she had married not a protector, but a cage, a wolf who would watch her struggle and delight in the limitations of her freedom. Every instinct screamed to resist, but every survival lesson she had learned as a girl told her that defiance could cost her life. As thunder shook the mountainside, her mind raced through memories she had tried to bury. The wolf attacks that had killed neighbors, the whispered warnings of old women in the village, the silent fear in her family's eyes whenever she ventured too far from the hearth. She had thought Kieran could shield her from it all. Instead, the man in front of her carried the same weight of danger, but sharpened by personal stakes. She could feel the tension in his muscles, the anticipation in the tilt of his head. And then she noticed it, a faint scar above his right eye, a mark of some long-forgotten battle. It was a small thing, but in that instant she understood that he was not just an alpha. He was a predator of a far more personal kind. Her stomach churned with dread as the cabin seemed to shrink around her, the walls pressing closer with the knowledge that she had willingly stepped into his world. Before she could gather her courage, Kieran moved closer, each step measured, deliberate, a silent declaration of dominance. The smell of wet fur and pine clung to him, grounding her in the reality she had fought so hard to escape. Her mind screamed for answers, for any clue that this nightmare could be survived, but the fear rooted her to the floorboards. And then, just as his shadow fell over her entirely, she glimpsed the truth in his eyes, a recognition, not of affection, but of an enemy long foretold by forces older than either of them. Her heart froze. This man, this alpha she had married for protection, was her fated enemy. and nothing in the world, no ceremony, no promise, could shield her from what was coming. The forest outside seemed to grow silent, holding its breath for the battle that would inevitably spill into the cabin, into her life, into her heart. Leora had never wanted a wedding, especially not one tied to the laws of wolves. She used to imagine a simple life in Bristlewood, a logging town where pine trees stretched taller than belief and fog curled like lace around rooftops in early morning. But everything changed the night her mother staggered through their door bleeding, whispering one name through a mouthful of dirt and terror. Kieran. Leora had pressed her hands against the wounds, begging her mother to stay awake, but those amber eyes dimmed under the flickering oil lamp. No explanation. No goodbye. Just that name. Like a curse. The next morning the elders closed off the forest paths, turning away hunters and sending frightened families to stay with relatives in faraway places. Leora stayed. She had nowhere else to go, no one left to protect her except her younger brother, Riven, and herself, if she could remain brave long enough. But fear had a way of twisting bravery into silence. Riven was only 12 when rumors began spreading about wolf sightings too close to the riverbank. The smell of fear became a constant in the house, seeping into blankets, bread dough, and sleep itself. Leora taught him how to barricade windows, how to listen for breathing on the other side of walls, how to run without making noise. But she couldn't teach him how to outrun fate. One evening, while patching the hole in their leaky roof, she heard a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a voice, something between language and hunger. It froze her mid-breath. Riven looked up at her with wide eyes, and for the first time she saw resentment mixed with trust. "We're prey," he whispered. The words hit harder than winter. She wanted to deny it, but denial had buried her mother, and she was done burying truth. The next morning, the village council summoned Leora. Their council hall was a creaking barn that smelled like smoke and dried sap, but the men inside carried authority like bloodhounds. Councilman Drogue leaned forward, eyes glassy. "There's one choice for protection," he told her. "Marriage." She laughed at first, thinking it a cruel joke, until Drogue produced a contract and a seal bearing the mark of a wolf's jawbone. "Alpha Kieran of Alderfang territory has agreed to take a bride. Wolves honor marriage pacts." Leora asked what price she would pay. Drogue did not blink. "Only your life, and your loyalty." Leora felt Riven's small hand grip her sleeve, trembling. In that moment, survival wasn't a noble story. It was ugly and forced. She signed. Then came the shock. Kieran hadn't lost a warrior to the creatures hunting the forest. He was rumored to be leading them. The council didn't meet her eyes when she learned it. That should have been her warning. The wedding was silent and fast, a ceremony done before sunrise, as icy fog rolled over moss-covered gravestones behind the chapel. Kieran arrived alone, no groom's party, no family, just the scent of iron and pine clinging to a black cloak. His eyes didn't linger on her face, only on her pulse where her heartbeat fluttered like a trapped moth. The priest muttered ancient vows, ones older than village law, older than kingdoms, older than the first wolf. When Kieran took her hand, his skin was cold. Too cold. Riven stood at the doorway, jaw set, trying not to cry, though Leora could see the sheen of tears in the morning light. She told herself she could endure anything for her brother. Anything. But there was one vow the priest made her repeat that chilled her marrow. "I bind, willingly, to my protector, to obey until death." The words tasted like dirt. Afterward, when the guests dispersed, Kieran leaned toward her and whispered his first private words since the contract. "You think I'm here to save you." His breath was warm now, oddly warm, like something burning inside him. But protection is never free. Then he lifted her wrist, letting his thumb press against the spot where a pulse throbbed like a plea. She should have pulled away. She didn't. Not because of love, she felt no warmth for him, but because Riven watched from behind, face pale, desperate. That night, instead of staying in the village, Kieran took her through the forest to his territory in the mountains, riding on a black horse that moved like shadow. Leora stared at the dark trees passing by, their branches arching above like claws. Somewhere between two ridges, she heard a howl that made her blood stop. When she looked at Kieran, she saw a spark in his golden eyes. Not joy. Recognition. And she understood one thing with crystal clarity. The wolves her mother feared were not hunting her. Yet, they had been waiting. Leora woke to darkness and a smell she couldn't name, something ancient, damp, and wild. Kieran's mountain home wasn't a cabin like villagers whispered. It was a fortress built into stone, hidden behind waterfalls and thick evergreens that swallowed light. Every room echoed with dripping water and distant growls that didn't sound human. She couldn't tell where night ended and morning began. In the main chamber, torches burned with blue flame, casting strange shadows across walls carved with symbols. Riven would have asked questions about every marking. Leora only felt dread. Kieran moved silently, always watching her from the edge of vision. He didn't touch her, but never allowed space to breathe either. That first breakfast he slid a bowl toward her, meat stew, rich and dark, and whispered, "Eat. Weakness is a scent." It wasn't kindness. It was instruction. She obeyed, too afraid not to. Yet one thought gnawed her. Wolves honor marriage pacts. But what else did wolves take? The house had only 3 rules, carved into the stone above her bed, written in runes she later deciphered with dread. Do not light a fire after midnight. Do not leave the hall when the wind howls. Do not open the 5th door. Leora didn't understand why, but her entire body told her not to ask. Curiosity was dangerous in a home built by predators. One evening, while standing in the corridor, she heard a strange rhythm behind that forbidden door. A beating, like something alive pressed its body against wood. Her skin prickled, instinct screaming that something inside knew she was there. Kieran appeared beside her, swift as a shadow. "Some things are hungrier than wolves," he murmured. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. But that night, she learned something new. The fortress walls weren't designed to keep enemies out, but to keep something inside. Then she spotted it, claw marks on the stone, long and deep. Days blurred into each other, but every new sunrise chipped away pieces of safety, until only fear remained. Yet odd kindness crept in unexpectedly. Kieran once handed her a cloak when the mountain air turned freezing, not looking at her when she whispered thanks. Another time, he stopped her from slipping on moss-covered stairs, as if protecting her body was instinct. Still, the mystery pressed heavier each day. Why her? Why this marriage? Why that contract? One night she overheard voices in a language that sounded like growls, disguised as words. She crept toward the balcony and spotted Kieran and 2 strangers, cloaked in fur. They spoke urgently, too quickly for her to understand. But she caught one phrase in common tongue that made her blood run cold. She must not remember what her mother did. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Remember? Her mother hadn't spoken anything but Kieran's name before dying. What memory was she missing? And why did wolves care? The next morning, the wind rose to a scream outside. Leora was washing her hands in a basin of icy water when she noticed something. A streak of silver hair hidden beneath her dark curls, like a flash of moonlight trapped in strands. She stared, confused. She'd never seen it before. Her heart rattled like a loose door in a storm. When Kieran entered the chamber, his eyes flicked immediately to her hair, pupils narrowing with something she had never seen from him. Fear. Hide that. His voice was sharp, urgent, nothing like his usual calm. She grabbed a scarf, covering it instinctively. "What does it mean?" she demanded. Kieran didn't answer. He only stepped closer, lifting her chin, scenting the air like an animal searching for truth. His hand trembled slightly. Just once. It was the smallest crack in his control, but enough to expose one truth she couldn't unsee. Kieran wasn't just hiding something from her. He was afraid of her. That night, rain hammered the mountain again, and Leora lay awake counting the rules in her mind like prayer. Midnight crept closer. The wind began to howl, low at first, then rising, spiraling, turning into a moan that sounded nearly human. She squeezed her eyes shut, telling herself not to look toward the hallway. But curiosity dripped like poison. At exactly the moment the torches flickered blue, a distant door slammed inside the fortress. The 5th door. Something moved behind it, shaking stone. Then came a whisper, too clear to be imagined, spoken in a voice as familiar as childhood. Leora, don't trust him. Her breath caught, frozen in her chest. It was impossible. But she knew that voice. It was her mother's. Leora sat upright, heart hammering so violently she could feel it in her throat. The fortress stones felt colder than ever, like the mountain itself was breathing against her spine. She pressed her ear to the wall, trembling, listening for her mother again. But only wind replied, threading itself through cracks like mocking laughter. No one should be able to speak through walls. No one dead. Unless death wasn't as final here as it was in the village. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and whispered into the dark room. What are you trying to tell me? Silence answered, but the words refused to leave her head. Don't trust him. Morning came gray and ruthless. Kieran didn't mention the storm or her sleepless night. Instead, he beckoned her into the great hall, saying, You will be escorted today. The word escorted slid across her nerves like a blade, but she followed because she had no choice, yet. Her escort was not what she expected. A young woman, barely older than Leora, with white blonde hair braided tight against her head, and eyes so pale they almost glowed. She wore leather armor that moved like second skin, and a knife hung at her hip. My name is Elaine, she said softly. I am his second. Beta. Leora swallowed, uncertain. Elaine gestured for her to walk beside her through narrow stone corridors lit only by torches. I am to teach you this territory, she continued. Knowledge keeps you alive. The statement felt both helpful and threatening. They stepped into an open courtyard carved directly from mountainside. Mist rolled over its edges, masking endless drops. A few wolves, too large for normal wolves, lounged on ledges above, watching Leora with eyes that gleamed like moonlit coals. Elaine leaned close. They can smell your bloodline. Leora stiffened. What bloodline? Elaine hesitated, too long. You should ask Kieran that. The lesson continued along the cliff path, the air cutting like glass. Elaine stopped at a ridge overlooking vast forest valleys. Every pack has an origin. Alderfang is older than myth, she said. But origins demand balance. Leora frowned, confusion tightening her chest. Balance? Elaine nodded. A fated opposite. Leora took a step back as realization pricked the edges of her mind. Elaine didn't elaborate, only whispered. This marriage wasn't chosen for love. It was chosen for consequence. Her eyes darted to the silver hair strand hidden under Leora's scarf. Before Leora could question her, Elaine abruptly changed tone. Let us continue. There is one more place you must see. They walked deeper into fog until the fortress disappeared behind them. Then Elaine stopped at a cracked stone archway covered in vines. This is the oracle chamber, she said. Only 2 people may enter, the Alpha, and the one fate binds him to. Leora's bones turned to ice. Elaine moved aside. You go alone. It called for you. Leora almost protested, but something pulled her, an invisible thread tugging her chest. Inside the chamber was circular, walls etched with spirals glowing faintly blue. In the center lay a pool of water, still as glass, reflecting light from nowhere. She approached slowly. The water rippled without touch. Then, her mother's reflection appeared. Leora gasped, falling to her knees. The reflection opened its mouth, but the water distorted her voice. Words mangled like broken echoes. Leora leaned closer, desperate. Finally, 3 words formed clearly. "He killed me." A scream clawed her throat, but no sound escaped. She reached toward the water, only for the surface to erupt, and an unseen force shoved her backward. She landed hard, breath ripped away. When she looked again, the reflection was gone. But something else appeared, a mark glowing on her forearm, shaped like silver flame. She hadn't seen it before. Elaine burst inside the moment Leora staggered to her feet. "You weren't supposed to touch the water," she hissed. But before she could scold further, her gaze froze on Leora's arm. Elaine's face drained of color. "That mark belongs to a lineage long thought dead." Leora backed away, panic surging. "What does it mean?" Elaine's voice trembled. "It means you're not prey. You're the one thing wolves fear." Footsteps approached from outside, heavy, deliberate. Kieran's silhouette filled the archway, golden eyes burning with fury, and something more terrifying. Recognition. He stepped inside, gaze locked on Leora's glowing arm. "You went where you weren't ready to go." His voice was low, dangerous. Leora shoved her arm behind her. "What are you hiding?" she whispered. Kieran didn't answer. He only advanced until his breath ghosted her cheek. "Your mother lied to you," he growled. "And if you remembered everything, you would know." His hand closed around her wrist. "You are the reason she died." Leora yanked her wrist free like she'd touched fire, eyes wide, lungs refusing to work. Kieran's words echoed in her head, sharp and cold. "You are the reason she died." She stumbled back until her shoulder hit stone. "You're lying," she whispered, voice shaking, but it didn't sound convincing even to herself. Kieran stood completely still, golden eyes burning with something darker than anger, something almost like regret. Elaine moved between them, a protective stance Leora didn't understand. "Kieran, not here," she warned. He ignored her. "Your mother wasn't a victim," he said. "She was a hunter." A chill sliced down Leora's spine, leaving her mind blank with terror and disbelief. Kieran took a step closer. "She wasn't killed by wolves. She led them." Leora's vision swam. Impossible. Her mother was gentle, soft-spoken, terrified of the forest. Or was that a lie too? The room pulsed with silence so heavy it felt alive. Elaine grabbed Kieran's shoulder, hard. "Stop! She's not ready." Kieran glanced down at Leora's arm, where the silver flame mark still glowed faintly, and his jaw tightened. Without another word, he left the chamber, footsteps echoing like thunder in her ears. When he disappeared, Elaine exhaled shakily, then knelt beside Leora. "Listen," she said softly. "There are things Kieran doesn't understand either. Your mother was not what she seemed." Leora's throat tightened. All her life, she had built memories around one truth. Her mother died terrified of wolves. What was she? Leora whispered. Elaine looked toward the glowing pool. She was born with a gift, or a curse, depending on who tells the story. Leora wondered which side her mother had been on. Slowly, Elaine lifted Leora's wrist. "This mark means memory, is awakening. You'll start to see what she saw." That night, Leora couldn't sleep. The fortress groaned with wind and distant howls, but her mind roared louder. If her mother was a hunter, what had she been hunting? Outside her window, moonlight bled through clouds, silvering the mountains. She thought of Riven, safe in the village, believing she married for protection. She had to protect him, too. She wrapped her cloak tight and crept into the hall, numb resolve forming with every step. Rules said, do not leave the hall when the wind howls, but rules had never protected her family. She pressed a palm to the cold stone, listening. The wind didn't sound like wind anymore. It sounded like voices whispering through the walls. Then, a single sound rose above them. A cry, not animal, not human, something trapped. She followed it, trembling, down a spiral staircase that smelled of rust and moss. At the bottom, she found a heavy iron door. Not the fifth door. Another one. And scratched into the stone beside it were words in a language she somehow understood. Remember what was taken. A rusted latch hung loose. Anyone could open it. But her hand shook as she reached for it. Before she could pull, a voice spoke behind her, soft as moonlight. You shouldn't be here. Leora spun. Not Kieran. Not Elaine. But a boy she had never seen before. Not much older than Riven, with hair the color of ash and eyes milky white, as if blind. Yet he tilted his head toward her like he could see through darkness. He wore a threadbare cloak and no shoes, feet blue with cold. Who are you? Leora breathed. He smiled faintly. A reminder. Before she could question, he lifted a trembling hand and touched the glowing mark on her arm. Immediately the air crackled, torches flickered, and images exploded in her head. Trees burning, wolves snarling, her mother screaming her name through smoke. Leora staggered, clutching her skull. A voice in the vision, her mother's voice, crying, "Protect the silver child." The boy withdrew his hand slowly. Your mother didn't fear wolves, he whispered. She feared you would become one. The boy stepped toward the iron door, placing his palm on it. Inside is what Kieran hides. The truth. Leora gasped, trying to steady her breath, but another noise cut her thoughts. A deep growl from above. Footsteps thundered down the staircase. Kieran wasn't alone this time. 3 wolves padded beside him, eyes gleaming with rage. The boy vanished, not walked away, vanished, like mist. Leora braced herself, pressing against cold stone. Kieran reached the bottom step, fury burning like wildfire in his gaze. You will stay out of locked rooms, he snarled. But there was no bite of dominance this time. It sounded almost afraid. Leora lifted her wrist, silver flame glowing brighter by the second. Tell me what I am, she said, voice shaking but strong. For a long moment Kieran didn't move. Then he looked straight into her eyes and said quietly, You are the prophecy my pack was trained from birth to destroy. The silence that followed shattered everything Leora thought she understood. Her breath caught halfway in her throat, suspended between terror and disbelief. The wolves at Kieran's sides lowered their heads, not in threat but in submission, like they feared her more than he did. Prophecy. Destroy. The words burrowed into her mind like thorns. What prophecy? Leora managed, though her voice barely carried over the hum of energy rising from her wrist. The silver flame pulsed, beating in time with her heart. She couldn't tell if it was burning her or protecting her. Kieran stepped down the remaining stairs slowly, as if approaching a wild animal. One that says a child born of light and old blood will unmake the last alpha and end the cycle before the next moon. His gaze flicked to the wolves behind him. You weren't supposed to exist. Leora's thoughts came in fragments, light, old blood, unmake. I didn't ask for any of this, she whispered. No one ever does, Kieran said. His voice had changed. There was no snarl, no dominance, only exhaustion buried under urgency. But choices end here. You opened the wrong door. I didn't open anything, she shot back. He did. The boy. Kieran's jaw tensed. There is no boy in this house. Leora shook her head hard. Don't lie. He touched the door. He told me about you hiding the truth. She pointed toward the iron barrier where her palm still hovered, heat radiating from it like the surface of a forge. The wolves whined low in their throats, uneasy. Kieran stared at the door, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw true fear crease his features. "That door hasn't been touched in years," he murmured. "Not by anyone living." Leora swallowed, pulse thrumming. "He vanished. Like smoke. Who is he?" Kieran didn't answer. Instead, he lifted his hand, motioning to one of the wolves. The larger of the three padded forward, sniffing the air around the door. Its fur bristled. A guttural rumble echoed from deep in its chest. "Back away from it, Leora!" Kieran's voice was sharp now, commanding. "That door was sealed for a reason." "Tell me," she insisted. "No more halves of truths. No more warnings. What's behind it?" Kieran closed the distance between them, standing close enough she could see the thread-like cracks in his irises, flecks of gold tearing through storm gray. "A blood vault," he said finally. "A prison. And a grave." Leora's skin prickled. Her wrist burned hotter, as if reacting to the word blood. "Whose grave?" Kieran opened his mouth to answer, but the house groaned loudly, wood and stone shifting as though something inside the walls stirred. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The wolves snapped to attention. "We can't talk here," Kieran said, eyes darting to the dark edges of the staircase above. "Something woke when you touched the door." Leora didn't move. "You said your pack was trained from birth to destroy me. And I was trained to lead them when the time came," Kieran replied. His voice held neither apology nor threat. Just a heavy truth. "But you weren't what I expected." "What did you expect?" she asked. "A monster." His gaze flicked to her wrist where the flame glowed a slow, spiral pulse. "Not someone who still asks questions." Silence again. Thick. Waiting. "I want answers," Leora said. "If you wanted me dead, you wouldn't be talking. So start explaining." Something in Kieran's posture shifted, like a decision snapping into place. "Fine." He pointed up the stairs. "Move. Slowly. No sudden sounds. And don't look back until we're out of this corridor." Leora hesitated, but the rumbling inside the walls grew louder. She stepped forward. Kieran and the wolves moved with her, forming a strange escort. Shadows stretched long on the stone floor, warped and twisting like shapes trying to claw free. They climbed the stairs. The house felt alive, the temperature dropping with every step. When they reached the landing, the door at the bottom slammed shut behind them with a sound like bone snapping. Leora jumped. Kieran didn't flinch. "Prophecy is older than my pack," he said as they moved, breath misting in the air. "Older than the forest. It started with a silver-blooded child who would carry fire in their veins. A fire that burns through lies and illusions. A fire that can wake the dead and unbind the cursed." "That sounds like a fairy tale," Leora muttered. "It's no tale," Kieran said. "It was scripture. A warning." They reached a narrow hallway lined with windows. Moonlight poured in, cold and unforgiving. Leora pressed her palm to the glass, needing something real to hold on to. "What does that have to do with me?" Kieran watched her, expression unreadable. "Your mother was hunted. Your father disappeared before you were born. You think that was accident?" Leora's throat tightened painfully. "You know nothing about them." "I know enough," Kieran replied. "I know your mother carried that fire once, and she hid it from everyone, even the packs that protected her." Leora turned away. "Stop." "You asked," he said gently. "I'm giving answers." Before she could respond, a sharp cry echoed from the far end of the hall. Not human, not wolf, something in between. The wolves' ears shot up, hackles raised. Kieran grabbed Leora's arm. "We're running out of time. That vault door, if it opens." "What's in there?" she demanded. Kieran looked straight into her, a terrible honesty in his eyes. "The first one who tried to end us. The original silver flame. Your ancestor." Leora's blood went cold. Dead? Not exactly, Kieran said. Waiting. A tremor shook the floor. The cry came again, this time closer, scraping along the walls like claws on slate. Leora's wrist flared white-hot, silver flames licking up her palm to her fingertips. Kieran swore, pulling her forward. We need to get you out of the house. No, Leora said, yanking free. I need to see what's behind that door. I need to know who I am. Kieran's voice broke into a snarl. You'll get every answer you want, if you live long enough to hear them. Leora stared back, heart hammering. Fear and curiosity tangled together until she couldn't separate them. Somewhere below, something began to bang against the vault door, slow and deliberate. Each hit cracked through the house like thunder. Kieran met her gaze, breath coming ragged. Leora, the prophecy says when the vault opens, blood burns moonlight, and nothing stays dead. The pounding grew louder. The iron door below screeched. Something was waking. Leora's chest heaved as the sound of the vault door pounding reverberated through the fortress. Each strike shook the stone beneath her feet, like the heartbeat of some giant trapped beneath the mountain. The silver flame on her wrist pulsed hotter, bright enough to cast shadows that danced wildly on the walls. Kieran's jaw tightened, and the wolves surrounding them growled low, their fur standing on end. Stay behind me, he commanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. Something about the noise unnerved him. Fear, Leora realized, pure and raw, had finally crept into the alpha. She stepped forward despite his warning. I can't stay back, she said. Her words trembled, but her resolve burned brighter than the silver mark. I need to know what's behind that door. I need to understand what I am. Kieran's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, enough for her to catch a flicker of doubt in his golden eyes. Then it hardened again. You might not survive if you do, he said. His hand reached toward her shoulder, hesitant, as though the contact itself carried weight. The wolves circled closer, forming a protective ring around him. And, unexpectedly, her. A deafening crash echoed from below. Dust and splinters rained from the ceiling as the vault door gave way slightly. Leora felt the air shift. Cold, metallic, and alive, it pressed against her skin like the touch of unseen hands. The sound was accompanied by a low, guttural moan that crawled into her ears and vibrated through her chest. Her stomach lurched. Something ancient and dangerous stirred behind the iron. Her pulse raced, every nerve in her body alert. She could almost see the shadows writhing behind the cracks, reaching toward the moonlight streaming through the windows. Kieran's hand tightened on the hilt of a dagger, but his eyes never left her. I didn't tell you the whole truth, he admitted, voice low and rough. Your bloodline carries the power of fire. Silver fire. It burns through illusions, binds and unbinds curses. Your mother tried to protect it. I've trained my pack to stop it, to contain it, until now. Leora swallowed hard, feeling the weight of history press down. Her mother's warnings, the boy at the door, even her own fear, all pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was living inside. The vault door shuddered again, splintering further. From the gap, a faint, glowing light escaped, flickering like embers. The wolves growled, a sound vibrating in her chest, warning her of danger that wasn't entirely human. Leora lifted her wrist instinctively. The silver flame reacted instantly, stretching upward in long, sharp streaks. It burned. Not pain, but awareness. The light in the vault responded. Whatever waited behind that door recognized her. Kieran's voice dropped to a whisper. Leora, if you step forward, there's no turning back. Nothing can unmake what's about to awaken. Her heart pounded against her ribs, echoing the pounding of the vault door. The choice trembled in the air between them. Survival or truth? Leora took a step. The wolves tensed, the fortress moaned, and the moonlight caught the silver flames spiraling up her arm. She exhaled slowly, every breath deliberate, and whispered, "I have to know." Kieran's eyes flickered with pain, rage, and something unspoken. The vault door creaked fully open, and a cold wind rolled out, carrying a scent she recognized without knowing why. Iron, smoke, and history. Shadows coalesced into form, tall and gleaming, a figure bound in silver light and black smoke. Its head tilted as if acknowledging her, and a voice, soft, terrifying, and familiar, rippled through her mind. "You've come." Leora's knees nearly gave way. She understood at last. She had awakened the first flame, and nothing would ever be the same again. Leora's legs trembled as she stared at the figure emerging from the vault. Its body shimmered like molten silver, shadows twisting across the contours of its form. The air burned around it, thick with power that made her pulse race, and her silver flame flare brighter. The wolves backed away instinctively, their low growls vibrating through the stone floor. Kieran's hand hovered near his dagger, but even he didn't advance. Instead, he stepped slightly to the side, allowing her to face it first. "Do not underestimate it," he warned, voice tight. "It's more than a spirit. It's the original silver flame. Ancestor. Prophecy incarnate." The figure tilted its head, scanning her with glowing eyes that mirrored the silver mark on her wrist. "So," it whispered, voice like wind over fire, "the child comes at last." The sound made Leora's chest ache, each syllable resonating deep within her bones. "I've been waiting for you," it continued, moving closer, each step leaving faint traces of light in the air. Leora's mind raced. Everything her mother had tried to hide, everything the boy at the iron door had hinted at, was here in front of her. She could feel it, sense it, the weight of generations, of destinies intertwined, of blood that demanded action. Kieran's voice cut through the tension. "Step back. You don't know how to control it yet." Leora shook her head, eyes fixed on the figure. "I need to know. I need to understand what I am." Her silver flame surged, streaks of light shooting up her arm like lightning. The ancestor recoiled slightly, its form flickering as though startled. "Yes," it said almost approvingly, "you carry the fire. But fire burns those who cannot command it. You will either master it or destroy everything you love." Leora's stomach churned, fear mixed with determination. She had come this far. There was no turning back. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward. Leora raised her hand instinctively, and the silver flame erupted between them like a wall of light. The ancestor staggered, smoke curling from its body where the energy struck. "Focus!" Kieran shouted, stepping closer, urgency in his voice. "You have the mark. You can control it, if you believe." Leora's eyes widened. The mark burned hotter, almost painfully, but she gritted her teeth and drew a deep breath, letting her heartbeat synchronize with the pulse of the flame. Slowly, carefully, she extended her hand and willed the fire to respond. Not outwardly, but inwardly, binding her power to her control. The ancestor froze, watching with unblinking eyes. For a moment, the room was still. Then the ancestor's form softened, shadows retracting, light stabilizing. "Impressive," it whispered, voice now calm, almost gentle. "You are truly the one. The silver flame lives in you, and through you, the cycle can end." Leora's knees nearly buckled, relief and exhaustion flooding her. Kieran exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging, as the wolves circled protectively around her. "You've awakened it," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Leora stared at her glowing wrist, at the ancestor, and finally understood the full weight of her destiny. She wasn't just a survivor or a pawn. She was the key to ending centuries of prophecy, and the enemy she had married to survive might just be the ally she needed to control it. The fortress shook violently as the ancestor's form began to pulse with silver fire, shadows coiling around it like living smoke. Leora staggered, clutching her wrist, flame flaring uncontrolled. The vault beneath them groaned, iron scraping stone, as if the building itself feared what had been unleashed. Wolves circled frantically, growls rising to a crescendo. Kieran's eyes glinted with a mixture of fear and awe, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger. "Brace yourself," he warned. "Once it fully awakens, nothing stays the same." Leora's pulse raced. She could feel power thrumming through her veins, ancestral fire that demanded obedience. And she wasn't sure if she could command it. The ancestors' eyes, molten silver and infinite, locked onto her. "Child of flame," it whispered, voice echoing in her mind. "You cannot deny what you are. The prophecy burns through you, and through you alone can the cycle end." Leora's legs trembled beneath her. She remembered her mother's warnings, the boy at the door, the iron-clad secrets of Kieran's fortress. Everything led to this moment. Her chest heaved, fear and determination clashing violently. She raised her hand again, the silver mark blazing like a star, and focused. Every memory, every lesson, every heartbeat aligned with the pulse of fire inside her. Suddenly, the ancestor lunged toward her, shadowy hands outstretched. Instinctively, Leora projected the silver flame outward, forming a dome of blazing light around herself. The force pushed the ancestor back, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it surged again, stronger this time, and the fire around Leora reacted violently, wrapping her like a living cocoon. Kieran shouted, stepping forward. "Use it, Leora! Command it! You can control it!" The words pierced through the chaos, snapping her into focus. She drew a deep breath, imagining her mother guiding her, the boy's warning echoing in her mind, and the fire obeyed. Slowly, deliberately, the silver flame bent to her will. The ancestor froze, form flickering as the power of control met raw force. The moment stretched, a heartbeat suspended in eternity. Then the ancestor bowed its head slightly, smoke dissipating, shadows retracting. "You are the balance," it said, softer now. "Through you, the cycle ends. Through you, fire does not destroy. It frees." Leora's knees nearly gave way. Relief and exhaustion collided in waves, and she felt tears sting her eyes. Kieran stepped beside her, placing a cautious hand on her shoulder. You did it," he breathed, awe in his voice. For the first time, Leora saw him without his mask of alpha control, a man who had feared the power of the prophecy as much as she had. Outside, the fortress seemed to exhale. Moonlight spilled in through broken windows, illuminating the silver mark on her wrist, now pulsing steadily in harmony with the night. Wolves circled, quieting, their eyes soft with respect. Leora glanced at Kieran. "We survived," she whispered. "But what now?" Kieran's lips curved into a small, rare smile. "Now, we rebuild. Your power is ours to protect, not to destroy. Your destiny is your own. The prophecy ends tonight because of you." Leora nodded slowly, feeling the weight of centuries lift. She had married an enemy, faced betrayal, endured fear, and emerged stronger. Silver flame still burned on her wrist, a reminder of what she was, what she had overcome, and the future she would now choose for herself. The first rays of dawn crept over the mountain, washing the fortress in soft gold. Leora stood on the balcony, silver flame on her wrist now steady, pulsing like a heartbeat in sync with her own. The night's chaos felt distant, almost unreal. The ancestor had vanished after acknowledging her control, leaving behind a lingering warmth in the air, a reminder that power, once mastered, could be a gift instead of a curse. Wolves padded silently around the courtyard, their eyes calm, trust settled in their stance. Kieran appeared beside her, still in shadow, watching her with something softer than dominance. For the first time, Leora didn't feel like a pawn in his game. She felt like an equal. "You've done more than survive," Kieran said quietly. "You've ended centuries of prophecy. You have the choice now, your own life, your own path." Leora swallowed, memories of fear, betrayal, and courage flashing through her mind. She remembered her mother's warnings, the boy at the iron door, and the pounding of the vault door as the first flame awoke. Every step had led here, to a moment where power and choice collided. She looked at Kieran, golden eyes softened with relief. "And what about you?" she asked. "Will you let me choose, or will you try to decide for me?" Kieran's lips curved in the faintest smile. "I was trained to lead, to command, to destroy what threatens the pack. But you've proven that prophecy doesn't have to control destiny. I won't stand in the way." His hand hovered near hers, not pressing, just offering. Leora took it after a moment, fingers brushing. There was warmth there, a promise that had nothing to do with contracts, protection, or fear. The fortress behind them was quiet, stones and shadows softened by the dawn. Wolves circled at their feet, nuzzles and growls mingling with the wind, acknowledging her power, but also her humanity. The silver flame on her wrist shimmered faintly, as if in agreement. Leora turned away from the balcony, toward the corridors and vaults that had once held secrets and danger. She understood now. The fortress had tested her, forced her to confront fear, betrayal, and power. She had faced the unknown, controlled it, and emerged unbroken. Kieran followed silently, a partner, not an enemy. Together they walked through the halls where shadows still lingered, past torches that flickered with life, toward the gates that opened into the world. Outside, the forest stretched vast and welcoming, bathed in golden light. For the first time in her life, Leora felt the weight of destiny shift beneath her feet. She was no longer the frightened girl who had married for protection. She was the child of silver flame, the master of her own choices, the breaker of cycles, and the one who could shape the future. Kieran glanced at her, eyes reflecting the rising sun. "Are you ready?" he asked. Leora nodded, feeling courage ripple through her veins, silver fire warm and steady. "I'm ready," she said. The mountains around them echoed her words, carrying them into the wind, a proclamation that the prophecy had ended, and a new era had begun. As they stepped beyond, the gates, wolves trailing silently behind, Leora looked once more at the fortress. No longer a prison, it now felt like a crucible. Everything broken, everything tested, everything forged into strength. She reached for Kieran's hand again, holding it firmly. "Let's go," she said. "We have our lives to live." He squeezed her hand in response, golden eyes warm. Together they walked into the forest, sunlight spilling over them, silver flame glowing faintly, alive and free. The prophecy was over, and so was the fear. If you enjoyed this story, don't just watch, be part of the adventure. Hit the like button to show your support. Comment below with your favorite character, or the moment that surprised you the most. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Share this video with friends who love romance, suspense, and supernatural twists. The story isn't over. More secrets, more twists, and more magic are waiting. Stay tuned for the next journey.